everyone. I thought I would come on and share a little bit about a comment I made on a website, on a page today. And it was a page called Diary of a Niger Girl, although what she was talking about cuts across. So long and short, it's really this conversation about women and success. So I thought I would share a little bit. There was a gentleman that had written into the page, right? She has a community page and often people write her with questions and issues. So a man had written to her and said that his wife had been, he started a business with his wife and his wife has become successful and she's making money. And even though he's like a great husband, which is kind of paraphrasing what he said, she is disrespectful to him. She is, she said, and one of the things he said is, why is it that some women, not all, he made the point of making that note, find it difficult to maintain humility when they become successful? So he's saying, you know, why is it that women are anyway, I'll come back to it. Let me tell you the whole thing first. So he said his wife is no longer humble, essentially, right? She's become successful. She's no longer humble. She's disrespectful, all of that. He's now complaining that he doesn't like the way she talks to him and he's frustrated. He doesn't know what to do. And I wanted to kind of share a little bit of, you know, my thoughts on the matter. Now, one of the things I had said was, there isn't enough information. He was basically saying from his perspective, I'm sure if we ask the wife, she will have some other things to say too. But his perspective was that she became successful and then she's become disrespectful and the undertone was emasculating, right? And he actually went on to say that he had been advised by people not to approach his marriage from an equality standpoint. He had been advised, you know, I could hear it like almost as if I could hear him saying, and they warned me to, you know, keep her in her place, to check her, that kind of thing. And yesterday, it's funny, I was watching a reality show here. Yeah. my guilty pleasure. I'm not really guilty. I don't feel guilty about it, but whatever. I was watching it. And it's called Love and Marriage. And this show, the gentleman on there, and I use the term loosely, he was basically talking, you know how they have the talking heads and they're talking to the camera? And he was saying something about his ex-wife. And he said two things that really show you the state of what's happening here. He said, you know, I need to put her in her place. Something along that line. I need to put her in her place. And then he said, this is how men will take back over. So he was responding to her like, you know, granted she has her own stuff, right? But he was responding to her sort of rising. And again, this idea of not being subjugated. I'm not even going to use the word submissive because that's not what they mean. They use the word submissive, but they mean subjugated. Anyway, so this is my response. I kind of want to talk about it. I'm going to read it to you, or a little bit to you, and then kind of talk about this idea of women and success. But let me tell you what I said in response to this man, right? So I said, there isn't enough information to go on, but as someone who has coached many women who are successful entrepreneurs, perhaps a few things could be at play. So I'm responding to what he's saying, that his wife became successful and she's now no longer humble, she's disrespectful, she's emasculating, all right? So I was responding. So number one, and the first thing I say is, it's likely an issue on both sides. Because I've actually talked to men who've had this complaint. I've talked to women who say that their husbands or their men, their partners have this complaint, right? And it's never just one person that's the issue. The issue is always both sides, right? In one way or the other. And so I gave three ways this could be showing up. Number one, the first thing I was saying is, there is this idea that money changes people, success changes people. It doesn't change people. It reveals and amplifies what's actually already happening. So whether you are a woman or a man, and I posted something I think yesterday where I was saying that in response to a question of should you build with a man, like let's say you meet a man and he's up and coming, and should you meet with him and build with him and meet him where he is and help him become greater. And I had said, I think people do build, like no matter how rich you are when you meet each other, you should be building, you should be elevating, iron sharpeneth iron. However, it's important that if you meet a person, no matter who they are, especially when they're up and coming, everyone should do their inner work. Because when you see a person who, when they were low, they were up and coming, they didn't have money or whatever the case is, and they were humble and they were kind and they were good, they treated you well. And then when they get a little bit of money and success, they act crazy and they're disrespectful and they're arrogant. Understand, it isn't the money that was the problem. That's who they have been. It's just that now amplified it. See, when they didn't have it, they couldn't show it. It probably showed in different ways, but they couldn't really bring it forth. But the money becomes an amplifier. Success is a revealer. It revealed what was happening on the inside. And so if you genuinely meet somebody and you think that's what's going on, understand they have inner work that needs to be done. There's stuff that needs to be done. If people are now telling you you're different and you're behaving different and you're rude or whatever, if people around you are saying since you became successful, it's gone to your head or whatever the case is, that's feedback to pay attention to say maybe something was going on here. Maybe something was going on here. Maybe there is insecurity. Maybe there was unworthiness, because unworthiness and insecurity can be flipped into a superiority complex. So you can start showing up that way because deep down inside there's an unworthiness. And the reason why I think that it was important to say that is that if you understand that, you don't think that the person is necessarily a terrible person. It's that there's a woundedness inside that needs to be addressed. And that allows for us to actually do our work. A lot of times we don't look at ourselves because we look at it as bad or good. And so if it's bad, then we just want to pretend it doesn't exist. Don't look at it as bad. Look at it as woundedness. Like, oh, I need to heal. I need to go heal myself. So that is one of the possibilities. The second thing I said is that sometimes men also have their own, hey Tara, men sometimes have their own unconscious bias. So he was saying that once my wife became successful, right, she then becomes she's become disrespectful, she's become emasculating, she cannot, if I tell her anything, she wants to tell me 200 reasons, So this is what he was saying. There was something that he said that made me say, he wrote it, he said, I don't know why it is difficult for some women, even though he wrote not all, the statement is an indicator that there's possibly underlying bias. Because he said, I don't know why it's difficult for some women to remain humble when they become successful. The reality is that statement, the fact that he said some women, the gender piece is the bias. Because if he had said, I don't know why it's difficult for some people, it's not unique to women. Some or all, it's not unique. It's a thing, right? For all people. And I just described why that happens sometimes, right? So when he said that, I was like, oh, wait a minute. That statement is highlighting there's a possibility of bias here. The scripture says, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So when he said that, oh, wait a minute. He might have something, he doesn't even know he has it. So that's why they call it unconscious bias. You don't even know that you have it. So he thinks, because he highlighted how I do 50-50 with the housework. I'm a great husband. So I'm all about equality. He highlighted all the things he had been doing. So he wants to, he's trying to be, effective and modern and all the, whatever the language you want to use. But there's a bias that he himself may not even know he has. And so what I was saying, the thing that could be happening here is once you have some belief, there's something called the law of inference. Once you have a belief, you have an underlying story, an underlying bias, you then ignore data that that refutes it, and you look for data to support it. So it's possible that he has a belief that once a woman becomes successful, and it's at the unconscious level, because he said it. Why is it difficult? So if he has a belief that once a woman certain behaviors, he's already looking for it. So maybe she might have been, he would have said, hey babe, can you pass me this water? And she's like, oh, can you get it yourself right now because I'm cooking. Maybe she would have said that before when she wasn't successful, and he wouldn't have thought anything of it. But the minute the same thing is happening, but he has it in his back of his mind that, oh, she's making 6 figures or whatever it is he has said, right? Then he sees it differently. Yeah, that cognitive dissonance, he sees it differently. And he doesn't realize that it is his lens that has changed. It's not necessarily her behavior that has changed, but it is his lens that has changed. So I said that's one other possibility that could be happening. In fact, all of these things could all be happening all at once, by the way, right? So I was just giving a number of possibilities, right? She could have her stuff, inner work. He also has inner work. He could have a bias, right? That could be happening. The other thing I now mentioned was that when I teach on masculine and feminine energy, sometimes the way we have been taught to work, a lot of women, the way the world works, the way we've been taught to work in business, in corporate, is a very masculine energy way of doing things. We're externally focused, we're very directed, very structured. It's very masculine energy, right? Get this done, do this, there's a lot of that. That's masculine energy, where feminine energy is very creative, intuitive, flow. It's a very different type of approach to work. Now, a lot of women that I've worked with, that they're bosses, right? And if you're in a boss mode, you've been taught how to operate in masculine energy boss mode. And so if you are operating in masculine energy at work, like you're the boss, you're telling everyone what to do, you're focused on structure, let's look at the numbers, process over people, results over relationships. That's not a bad thing in your space, right? But then if you come home with that masculine energy, and he is in he's a masculine man, right? If he leads with masculine and you lead with masculine, you're coming back home. Typically, one of two things happen. Masculine repels masculine, right? So if you come into the space, your home space, with masculine energy, and he's leading with masculine energy, he will either try to, have you seen two dogs trying to square off? He will either try to dominate, push, like, hey, don't bring that here. I'm the man. Like a lot of that posturing will start to happen. But unfortunately, what happens is that when a man does that, and a woman, naturally, masculine is about protecting yourself. So when you start trying to dominate her, it doesn't make her now say, oh, let me just shift into my feminine. It actually makes her more likely to stay in her masculine and start to fight back because she's protecting herself. It's scary. Like if you were able to say, hey, babe, what's going on? You're saying, hey, wait a minute. Remember, it's me. I love you. This is home. I got you, babe. Like if you were able to hold space for her and help her shift into feminine, that would be different. She'd be able to shift. But when you now start to try to dominate her, right? And try to hey, you need to submit, then her reaction, natural human reaction, just think about it. Whenever someone tries to push you into a corner, isn't your reaction like, wait a minute, no. No one puts baby in the corner. She starts to push back automatically because it's not a safe feeling. Whenever someone's trying to dominate you, you no longer feel safe. And for women to shift into their feminine, the easiest thing is when they feel safe. If they don't feel safe, they're not going to shift. They cannot shift. So if he understands, he can shift, he can hold the space, and then she can shift. But if she understands, she can also recognize, okay, I need to make sure that I can shift into my feminine. So when I work with my clients that are women, that's one of the things I help them understand. Okay, hey, when you come home, let's talk about how you can shift into your feminine, so that you are not in a place where both of you are like butting heads. The other response that masculine has to masculine is he withdraws. He starts to withdraw, or he starts to look for reasons to withdraw. He can even start creating reasons. Oh, I don't like the way she talked to me, right? Or whatever, he starts pulling away because masculine repels masculine. or the sexual polarity completely dies. Completely dies. So these things can be at play, but a lot of times we don't even know. And we file it under when women become successful, there's a problem. Success is not the problem. We need to be successful. If you are, if we have two successful people in the home, then we have higher income, we have higher impact, we have higher influence. We need to be successful. The idea that women should be less successful in order to have successful homes is a fallacy. It's not true, right? It's wrong. Success is not the problem. Money is not the problem. It's a lack of knowledge that's the problem. It's a lack of knowledge. So someone asked the question, is it all men that have this problem? I feel that some men's ego are huge compared to some. It just takes understanding to know who you're dealing with. Yeah, so it's not just men's egos that are huge, right? It's all of us have ego issues. We all have that thing. And if you're not self-aware and you haven't done, this is why I talk about the inner work. Women have ego issues too. In my mastermind, where I have an iconic women mastermind that's designed for women who are called to be leaders. So if you know you're called to lead a ministry, you're called to lead a business, you're called to, rise in your career, I have the mastermind designed for feminine leaders. The first thing we do, the first module, before we talk about money. So one of my clients she's in the current mastermind. She said, I have some feedback for you. I said, oh, tell me. And she said, I did not realize that this program had so much business knowledge, because in the mastermind, we literally talk about how to increase your impact, your influence, and your income. She said, I didn't realize it had so much business knowledge. I feel like you're doing it a disservice, because I would have joined 2 years ago if I realized that there would be so much business work in here. But you talk so much just about the inner work. And I said to her, you know what, thank you for that feedback. I'm actually going to think about that as far as marketing. I tell you though, I talk about the inner work because that's the first thing we do. Before we talk about money, before we talk about 6, 7, whatever figures you want, before we talk about rising to the C-suite or whatever it is wherever you're going to go, the first module is ego, dealing with your stuff, your inner work. Because if you don't handle that, it will handle you. And like I said, success is an amplifier. Whatever the stuff is that's there, that isn't dealt with, that isn't unpacked, that, you can become the worst boss. You can become really toxic, really dangerous. You can become an influencer who is a mean girl. You can all of that because you haven't done your inner work. So all of us have that. And when you see a lot of men, people often talk about men as in, oh, they have big egos. Here's the thing that I think women have been told from time, and I've seen this across the board, whether it's women in Nigeria, whether it's women here in Atlanta, whether it's women in the UK, women are constantly told you need to go fix yourself. Go get this, go do this, go fix yourself. So as a result, more women have done their work because we have been told that we need to do the work. So it's actually worked in our benefit in a way, because more of us have sought after self-help. Go to churches, you see mostly women, right? More of us have gone to trying to figure out ourselves because we've been told that we need to figure out ourselves. Where men, the unfortunate thing that has happened for men is they're actually told, don't you know you're a man? As if being a man that's all it is. Be a man, be a man. They're not told that they need to do the work. In fact, doing the work, the idea of doing the work is considered very feminine. A man doesn't need to do the work. So very often they don't get the opportunity to look at their woundedness, to look at their ego, to ask themselves, is unconscious bias showing up here? Is misogyny showing? They don't have the opportunity to do that.